Hey everyone, I'm Gamerman John, and today I want to talk to you about Resident Evil Project Resistance. I had the privilege, like a bunch of us, to try the closed beta of Project Resistance during the past weekend, and I just want to share my thoughts on the game with you. Should you buy it or not? Is the game is for you or not? That's what we'll find out right now. Alright, so let's start with the basics first. Project Resistance is not your regular type of Resident Evil game. Project Resistance is in fact a cooperative PvP game in a sense that you're playing with friends as survivors or you're playing as a mastermind against the survivors. You can see that kind of gameplay to the likes of Left 4 Dead or Dying Light or games like that, or Friday the 13th, for example. So when you are playing as the mastermind, your job is basically to try and trap every survivor, put zombies everywhere, and make sure they don't reach the exit. As the survivor, you have to go through a bunch of puzzle-ish like rooms, play together and try to avoid the traps set by the mastermind and exit alive. So my impressions on that game so far is that the game is bad. Okay, now don't get me wrong, the game might be for you or might not be for you. That's what we're gonna discuss later. But let's go through the facts first. So on the gameplay side, Project Resistance offers the kind of gameplay that you can expect from a third-person perspective game, which is not bad. But in this case, the controls are really hard when you play as a survivor. And when I said really hard, I mean they're hard to get because they're kind of bad. When trying to hit with melee attacks, you tend to never hit where you want it to go. The camera seems to be very hard while moving around, especially with melee attacks. Now for the gun or range attacks, it seems like other than grenades, most gun has an auto aim, which will automatically aim at a part of the monster, zombies, whatever, and it seems to be really hard to aim at the head just because of that auto aim. So I hope, and I haven't checked that, but I hope that this feature will be will have an option to enable or disable it, because it kind of get frustrating real quick. Other things that is noticeable as a survivor is that the camera tends to return or recenter itself very often, which makes it very, very difficult to see where you're going most of the time. On the other hand though, if you play as the mastermind, the camera controls are way different, and even the game control themselves for the characters, because most of the time you're playing as a camera. You're looking through the cameras in the building, which is way easier to get around. It's way easier to rotate, it's way easier to look where you want to look at, and when you take the commands of a character, you just have to rush at your enemies and smash the button basically. And if you're taking Mr. X, then Jesus, poor survivors are gonna take it. Alright, now on the level design side, and now don't get me wrong, there might be other levels. In the closed beta we have only one level, so maybe that's not the best one, maybe that's the most polished one so far, but not their best one. We'll see that when the game will be released. But so far from what I experienced, the level design is not really good. The puzzles are not really fun to do, and the levels are kind of repetitive and similar to what we've experienced in other games like that before. So there's nothing really interesting on the level design side there. Now let's talk about the graphics. The graphics of Project Resistance are okay, and that's not a selling point for me most of the time, but the graphics are kind of okay, I would say, but not really that good. I haven't experienced anything really astonishing, like no special like wow moment or anything like that. The game is okay, and okay, that's all. Now though, on the animation side, that's where the games get a bit uglier. The animations are so bad when you play as a survivor that even the attacks or the damage taken to by your character seems off. And I don't know if it's because the timing of the animation is weird or something like that, but it doesn't feel right. And you might experience it yourself, or you might have experienced it yourself, but even when playing with the zombies, which is not as bad because you're just plowing through the survivors, so it's not as important, I would say, but the thing is that the animations are bad and it makes you feel like you're not doing what you should be doing. It makes you feel like the attack doesn't hit when it should hit, and it makes you feel that you're not hitting where you should hit. So it's a really important point about controls and the feeling of the gameplay that you're playing in Project Resistance. So that's for me, it's a big no-go. They need to fix that to make the game interesting, at least for me. Another thing that I've noticed while playing that game is that since it's a multiplayer game, the latency or lag is really important. And one of the things that seems to happen quite a lot is that it's kind of hard at first to start a game or to find a game, but that's not the real problem here. That's not a real issue. The real issue is, it seems like, and I hope that's just for the beta, but it seems like you cannot choose the people or the quality of the connection you're joining people with. That can cause things like that kind of lag that can happen in a room kind of empty. So the game started lagging. It didn't happen that often, but for me, especially for a multiplayer game, that's a big no-go. If they don't fix that latency thing, then that's a big no-go. I won't even try to play the game with latency. Now, one of the final points that I want to talk about is actually the game design and the game balance. Now, right now, as we are talking about this, the game is in closed beta, and I know that for a lot of people, closed beta means they have a lot of time to complete the game and it's not over yet, and there's plenty of time to do a lot of things. But believe me, as a game developer, I can tell you, when you reach the beta, the things that you can do most of the time are slight balance, a couple of tweaks on level designs, and a couple of basically tweaks and bug fixes. There's not a lot of balancing or big changes to the game that you can make at this point. So one of the things that I fear the most is that right now the game is so unbalanced, and I'm gonna explain it. When you play as a survivor, you have to create a team of 4 players, and you need to talk a lot and you need to cooperate in order to make it possible to go through this game. And that's a cool thing. That's not bad. That's a very cool thing. The problem is that when you play as a mastermind, you have so much powerful tool to make sure that your survivor enemies won't reach that goal, that even a single zombie, like the fat zombie or raging zombie, these zombies alone, one of them, if played by a player that knows what he's doing, they won't even have enough time to reach the next goal on the other side of that room. And that's another part of the game design that I wanted to talk about. Time. Why did they have to put time there except for a challenge or leaderboards maybe or something like that? But timing your players in that kind of game, just make it that the survivor has to rush towards the exit, and they are not careful at all at what they're doing. And that's mostly what happened. People just rush through the objective and try to go to the other side, and it makes it so much easier for the mastermind that doesn't have that kind of limit, that kind of blocker. He just throw things at the survivor and make sure they don't reach the goal in time. Now we've talked about the zombies, the simple zombies, and how much time as a mastermind you can make the survivor waste just running around and killing a zombie. And now we're gonna talk about the tyrant. The tyrant, if played by a good player, and I mean I was not really good, and I'm not good at multiplayer games most of the time, so I was really bad in that performance, but is so powerful that you can kill, with one instance, you can kill at least 3 survivor if you place your stuff and plays your cards well. Which is basically, for the survivors, there's nothing to do. It's like one side or the other. And as opposed to when playing Resident Evil 2 Remake, where you can run around and just avoid him, and it's controlled by an AI, which is basically doing always the same thing, it's kind of easy to avoid, but played by a player, that's just unfair. That's completely unfair. They have to do something about that. Otherwise, people will just get frustrated. On the 4 or 5 games that I've played, I've never seen a single game beaten by survivor. It's always a mastermind that wins. And I've played on both sides, but nope. It's kind of so easy when you're playing as the mastermind, and so hard when playing as a survivor that it feels really, really unfair. So that's pretty much it, guys. To conclude, I would say game design and level design wise, the game is not really good. We're not there yet. They still have a lot of balancing to do before I would call it by myself. On the animation side and the story side, there's nothing there really interesting either. And we haven't talked about story because there's no story at all in the game from what I've experienced and from what I've understand of the game they're trying to make. So for me, that's a big no-go right now. Don't buy this day one. Wait for a better patch or something better out of it. Unless you really want to experience multiplayer, PvP, cooperative kind of things, aka Left 4 Dead, but not as good as Left 4 Dead. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a like, and I can't wait to read all your comments below. So thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.